Today, again, we're excited to have Brian Dukes bring us his insight, value, wisdom. Has been a serial entrepreneur. He's actually developed and grown a marketing company out in the Michigan area where it grew to, I don't know, how many employees did you have?
Over 1,000.
He had over 1,000 employees as a part of this company, and they ended up exiting. So he went through the ups and downs of exiting, but also he's here to share with us his extensive experience of the multitude of transactions that he has just currently went through, as well as some in the past. So thank you so much for joining us today on the Acquisition IQ Network online meeting, Brian Dukes.
Thank you, Nathan. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is exit readiness, and just really lean into this community. Education and the kind of intersection of education into M&A is something that we're really passionate about. So there's real obvious alignment between our two organizations, and I'm just privileged to be such a big part of the community that you built. So a little bit about myself. As Nathan said, I'm a managing partner and M&A advisor at newly formed Exitwise. We're 3 years old. We had the good fortune of closing our 15th and 16th deals last week, right on the heels of Aquacon. So if anybody of you saw me incredibly stressed, popping out of the conference a couple of times, it was because we were literally in the throes of finalizing those two deals. I'm a one-time exited founder. I kind of call myself an accidental entrepreneur because I didn't really know that that was the path that I was going to be on when I grew up. Dad was in automotive. My mom was a school teacher. I thought I was going to work at one of the kind of the big automakers for most of my life, and really that was kind of where the story started. I fell into a joint venture, a Ford Motor Company, became the 15th employee, started to cut my teeth on maybe what a lot of us experience, which is, making decisions in a small growing business actually matter versus being part of a big behemoth. And ultimately co-founded a MarTech business in automotive. Grew it from the four of us in a closet to over 1,000. We had a spectacular M&A failure kind of midstream, which I like to say was probably provided the most learning that I've ever had. Oftentimes in life, when you fail, you find a lot of education in that process. And then I ran M&A over the next several years. We actually successfully ran a process ourselves. We then acquired a bunch of businesses along the way, and then I personally exited in 22. Really to take a break and a deep breath and decide what I wanted to do next. Ironically, as much of us do in entrepreneurship, it lasted about 30 days before I really found my calling. In full circle to kind of Nathan's comments. We found this place at ExitWise of kind of merging the idea of education and all we've learned as operators and builders and sellers of our own businesses, and trying to apply those learnings across M&A. So today I'm really going to focus on one topic, which is exit readiness. And the reason is because, in our opinion, M&A is broken. This statistic of success rates in M&A, I think, is actually a bit high. I see it as low as 10 or 15% of businesses that go to market fail to transact, which, whatever number you want to make up, it's, approximately $10 trillion worth of value lost in those sales. But I'd say just as importantly is a massive distraction, loss of momentum. I have a couple examples in a couple slides that talk about when you're midstream in a process and you lose focus, it can really impact your business. And the worst thing that can happen is you lose that focus, you get distracted, you lose a key customer, and then the transaction doesn't happen, and you're really in a bad place. And so, why does that happen? Why is, in our opinion, the industry broken? It's really kind of three areas that we like to focus on. The first is lack of preparation, which I'm going to dive into a lot today. Valuation is a second piece. I think there's a lot of misinformation around value and value creation. and valuation ranges that I love to talk about. And I think it is one of the big reasons why businesses go to market misunderstanding what their value is, and they kind of bail out before a transaction can occur. And then not having the right M&A team around you. A lot of DIYers out there, I've been there myself, potentially picking up the wrong broker, M&A advisor, or banker, depending on the size of your business, or having, the wrong M&A attorney is I think core to a lot of failure. Nothing against the attorneys out there, but if you're not an experienced M&A lawyer, oftentimes you're negotiating the wrong points and can really create friction in a process. So let's dive in. I have about six different elements that we start with any client and anybody that comes to us that says something like, I'd like to better understand what this process could look like, or am I ready, or what am I worth, or I just had a knock on my door, can you sell me in the next 4 weeks? We always kind of take a deep breath and slow them down and put them through kind of these six key areas. The first is owner readiness. And I guess let me start by saying um, these elements change obviously depending on the size of your business. So if you're a $1 million Main Street business, or you're a $100 million global enterprise, the nuances of this kind of readiness conversation can change. But owner readiness is a consistent element across every transaction that we've ever been a part of. In my last business, I tell you candidly, one of the reasons for that failure was the CEO was really surprised that he was going to have to stay with the business for an incremental 3 years as part of that transaction, and that expectation was set because he was the kingpin of the business. He represented himself as being incredibly involved in all aspects of what we had built. And so, looking back, it shouldn't be a surprise that the buyer is going to expect that individual to be a big part of this. And so, I represent this as a deal killer. This idea of, every business owner on earth wants to sell their company for all cash and be gone in 30 days, and that is a possibility, of course, but only if you're setting yourself up for that success. And so, a couple best practices here. Spend time as part of your responsibilities as CEO or owner, thinking about that ideal outcome. What is the timing in your career? What's the optimal deal structure? What role do you envision yourself into that future? And then take that vision and create a clear plan out of it. If your goal is to have a quote unquote second bite of the apple, that means that you sell a portion of the business initially, and then you earn out later on a much bigger portion. That means you're going to be a part of the organization for a long time, and you can make decisions based on that. But if you want to be out within 30, 60, 90 days, then you need to build out your team. You need to have clarity in your own personal role, the leadership within your organization, and most importantly, that whatever that value is that you believe you're going to get in the transaction, it has to align with your personal goals of what that plan is. So, for example, we talk to a lot of business owners that say, "Hey, I want to go buy a vineyard. I want to open a local distillery. I want to own a farm, or I want to go buy a golf course." Well, understanding what that costs, not one-time expense, but ongoing, what that's going to do to your personal finances, needs to align with, when you sell your business, am I actually accomplishing that goal? So those are probably pretty obvious examples, but it's all about understanding what the goal is that you want to accomplish, setting a path, actually accomplishing it, and then really understanding what that means for you in your life. Let's go to the next one. Financial cleanup and defensibility. So, we all hear when it's time to go to market, we need to have quote unquote clear financials. But what does that actually mean? From a deal killer perspective, we literally just sold a business earlier this year that we felt pretty good about their financials. Every business that goes through our process, has gone through audited financials to get there. But midstream, they missed their quarterly revenue target by 40%. And I don't have to tell you the punchline of that story to say that there's going to be a what we would call a retrade or a renegotiation of that enterprise value when something like that happens. Now, that's an extreme example of missed targets, but also you could just as easily kind of misinterpret or misassign or misrepresent your historical financials in a way that when the buyer starts to dig in, they start to find things that don't make sense or don't align with their expectations. And that, just like anything else in life, will drive additional conversations, additional questions, and you go start going deeper and deeper into that process. So what do we do here? We like to say a couple things. One, with the help of either an internal financial team or an external resource that you trust, regularly stress test your business. What does that mean? It's looking at your forecasts, which is also point number three. It's looking at your forecasts that you've historically presented and understand how have you done against those forecasts. If you're consistently saying, I'm going to grow at 50% every year, and then you look backwards and realize you actually only grew 7% each year, um, we need to reassess what that forecast looks like. On the flip side, you need to really understand how your business can survive ups and downs, whether it's industry specific, economic, or otherwise. We have a business that was going to market a couple months ago that was very focused on imports. They obviously they were hit really, really hard with the tariff news. And so we had to pause that business because they were not prepared or capable of surviving that short-term pain. And we had to put a pause in the business for 6 or 9 months. Um, and then the kind of the 3 to 5 years of consolidated financials, this is just, kind of good hygiene with your financial professionals, again, internal or external. Let's go to the next. Systems and structural optimization. Um, this can mean a lot of different things, but ultimately, the deal killer that I would highlight is a lack of clarity in what the company's moat is or what is strategically important for the business as you think about going to market. Um, I think that too many businesses have a vision of a timeline, and they forget to derive or they lose the narrative of what's important in that company when they go to sell. And again, a moat can be a lot of things, but this is what is strategically guiding your business towards that future. What is the story that you're telling that will be believable for a buyer that understands that the business will continue to grow once you're no longer involved? The clients will want to continue to work with you. That your team is motivated to continue down this path, even if, a few managers within the organization are no longer there. And the best way to do that are some of these best practices, right? Documenting core operating procedures. We can't guarantee that every employee is going to stay with the business post-transaction. What we can do is make sure that everything that those employees are doing is documented properly. And we have the best opportunity of replicating work being done that is core to the business. This means that when a business goes through a transaction, and even if they lose somebody core to the team unexpectedly, that all hands can survive that process and replicate anything that had been done historically. Technical integrations. This is a big one when you have, deep you have deep technical architecture across various arms of your business, and ensuring that you have again not just clear documentation, but you have really deep and defined integrations between those core solutions like your CRM or your financial software like Quicken, any customer satisfaction scores or digital KPIs that are relevant to your business. And then, I don't talk too much about AI in this presentation, but the clearly understanding the role of AI both in your business today, but where it's going to affect the industry as a whole. We talk to a lot of businesses that say, "Oh, we use a ton of AI." What they really mean is that individuals within the business utilize AI to help their tasks. That's very different than building a business on the backbone of AI. And clearly understanding the difference between those two and documenting what is core to the business, what is allowed within the business, so you can paint that picture for the future to any buyer is really, really important. Number four, human capital and org structure. Now this feels a little bit like point one, but it's really the survivability of a business uh, in relation to the leadership team. So if you have a CEO that is very, very engaged in the business, they can't go on vacation for 30 days without the business falling apart. Every decision has to go through them, small to large. That is a problem when it comes time to sell. That should seem really, really obvious, but when you're in the throes of building a business, sometimes it's hard to see the forest for the trees. As entrepreneurs, we grow up, being, you start a business and you are doing everything. You are part of every aspect of that business. The important part as you grow and mature towards an exit is to not be involved in every aspect and to put your employees and your leadership teams into a place that can allow them to be successful. So examples, quarterly reviews of the org chart, ensuring that there are clear roles and responsibilities for every level across the organization, decentralizing priorities and responsibilities across that org chart, and doing your best to put people in the right seat and allow them to win and at times fail in that process in an effort to distribute the load and ultimately get to a better place. And then, a kind of a basic one that I see a lot, unfortunately, is regularly ensure all your employee agreements are up to date, they're compliant, they're signed, they're stored in a singular location. I can't tell you how many times we'll say, "Hey, we need this org chart. Who are all the people that are within the org chart? Can I get signatures of all your employee agreements and what's covered in those agreements?" And it's like, okay, well, Bob, he was very early, so he just signed, the early document that has one paragraph that doesn't contemplate IP ownership. Sally, she came on much later, and oh, she's got this great document. And then Billy, he was midstream. I don't know. I can't seem to find his documents. We literally had this example with a business that we were selling last year. There was a small component of IP that had been outsourced to a third party overseas. Ironically, there were two locations of the developers. One was in China, one was in the Ukraine, and it stalled the sale process for almost 4 weeks trying to track down those individuals to ensure we got IP signatures on that code that was written. It's one that, as entrepreneurs, we fly past that red light sometimes. I get it, I've been there, but it's just such an easy thing to manage on a daily basis. Is every time you bring on somebody, make sure your documents are managed properly. All right, number five, value driver optimization. So, again, this one can be easy to criticize and harder to deflect or address. If you have a business that has, represents a significant portion of your revenues, that can be a problem. In my last business, we had a business that made up almost 40% of our overall revenue, and we fought like crazy every quarter to distribute that load as best as we could. Ultimately, we lost that customer, and it put a really big hole in our business for a couple years. We came out the other side in a better place, but that was a really, really bumpy road. So what can we do about this? Find ways to pivot client agreements into long-term engagements. But more importantly, even if you have one really big client, who are the owners within that client? Who are the champions that you're working with? Trying to just distribute the load of those relationships across multiple parties is a really good idea. To not put all the risk in one person at one client, that puts you in a really, really difficult place when you go to sell your business. And oftentimes a buyer will reduce your overall value if there is that much risk in the deal. Understanding and assessing your IP brand recognition, kind of the network effects of what you're building, And I kind of already said it, diversity of customer base. You just should always be thinking about how do I profitably grow the customers and distribute the customers as best as I can within the business that I'm building. And last, number six, kind of deal room prep. You don't need to spend, hundreds of hours a quarter building out a complicated deal room. This just comes down to if you spend the time each day and each week studying for the final exam, you're going to be in a much better spot when the time comes. I can't tell you the number of times that I get a phone call from a founder saying, "Hey, I need your help going to market. I got an inbound offer last week. I'm really excited. What do I do?" And I asked them a question of like, okay, what have you sent them? And unfortunately, the answer oftentimes is, oh, I've sent them everything. I sent them my tax returns. I sent them, my QuickBook extracts. I signed their NDA. Like, I'm just waiting for them to kind of tell me what the next step is. And I understand that excitement. You're just in a much better spot if you've audited all of those components, not just your financials, but a lot of the things we've talked about to this point, employee agreements and customer contracts, and of course, kind of audited financials that are organized. Uh, Racing out unprepared to send a bunch of information, it's exciting in those early days and weeks, but oftentimes what happens is you'll have to restate those numbers over time because whoops, I included too much or too little. Whoops, I didn't realize that, my personal expenses were being included in that. Or there's a separate business unit that wasn't part of that extract. You can fill in the blanks here. The less that you need to restate or update the documents that you send that first time, the better. Anytime you have to restate, even if it's for the good, you'll very rarely be able to extract additional value. Oftentimes, when you restate, the number goes down in your overall valuation. And so I always say, hang tight. Um, let's make sure that you're organized and ready to go. And if you put in that time each day, each week, each month as kind of a core responsibility as an owner, you're going to be a better spot when you get that knock on the door. Last slide. Okay, congrats. You've been preparing. You've been spending a little bit of time each quarter ensuring that you're driving towards this organized kind of perspective of that future. You've thought about what you want to do with this
Yes.
business and where you want to go. Um, you get a knock on the door. Hey, I'm interested in buying your company. What do you do? It's my first response is always take a deep breath, enjoy that someone has come to you and said, I value what you're building and I'm interested in having a conversation. Take a deep breath and don't feel like you have to race to provide a bunch of information. Always take that step back to enjoy the moments and really be thoughtful about what your next step should be based on everything that you've done to this point. Second, hopefully you've understood your value of your business, what the industry thinks of your business. You've been thoughtful about your kind of optimal deal structure, but understanding what this potential buyer brings to the table, you want to update that perspective. If they're a strategic that you know that can really extract a lot more information or a lot more value from your business than you have, versus a financial buyer that is maybe just trying to buy on the cheap, update your perspectives of what you think that value, that acceptable value range is for your business and what that optimal deal structure could be. And then once you've come to terms with that and you validate that this is, a buyer that wants to have a very real conversation, now you start building your M&A team. Of course, at ExitWise, we are full service M&A advisors. We handle a lot of the services that I've talked about today, but I encourage business owners to look around. There's incredible advisors, bankers, and brokers that can represent your business. Um, I would just always recommend doing your research and understanding the team that you're building. This is the most important, likely to be the most important financial opportunity that you're facing as a business owner, and you want to choose correctly and ensure you're getting the right representation for your deal. Um, So with that, I'm going to pause. I know I talked for maybe a little bit longer than intended. Again, my name is Brian Dukes, managing partner at Exitwise. If you have any, I'm going to stick around for questions if there are any. But if you have anything offline, please reach out to me. There's my email address, my cell phone. We'd love to run you through an exit readiness or evaluation process and really just try to set you up for success and answer any questions you have. So Nathan, back to you.